G'day, legends. Welcome to Beyond the Taper podcast, where we chat to people doing rad things in the mountain bike industry, predominantly in Australia, but also a bit overseas. This episode is pretty rad. It's a long one. Tips almost 2 hours, I believe, with the man himself, Ty from Captyvate or Captyvate. We go into everything to do with shooting, mainstream media, commercial stuff, what it's like to go down to Hardline, what it's like to shoot Notion, what it's like to get 1 point something million views on the internet, a bunch of stuff like that. It's a banger episode. And this episode is available because we have amazing partners like Trek Bikes. Those guys are absolutely killing it at the moment. Loving my Fuel EX, and man, I'm keen to try their new tyres. Frank Mountain Bike Apparel are keeping me clothed while I'm riding. Don't forget to use the code Beyond the Tape at the checkout for those guys so that you can get a sick discount. It's on the best clothing ever. Shred Bike Care is the same, man. Like, you can't get your bike cleaner than when you use Shred Bike Care. Absolutely love their stuff. And again, head over to their website, use the code Beyond the Tape, get yourself a rad discount. Fist handwear are keeping my hands protected on the bike and now at work with their new workwear gloves. Just got a set lately, and they've been saving my hand from the frostbite during these cold mornings. Lead Out Sports is still offering the best tools on the market. Man, the Pedro stuff, best value for money you can find out there, and it looks sick. Cut Out Caps are keeping my head stem attached to my hooks where I like it, and preloading my stem while looking damn good. If you've got a brand that you want a custom cap made for, hit those guys up. And huge shout out to Oakley for keeping me peepers protected. Anyway, that's enough of me dribbling on for this one. As I said, banger episode coming in. So as per usual, grab a beer, grab a water, grab a wine, grab whatever makes you happy, and enjoy this podcast.
Yeah, stoked. I need to ask a question. Is it Captyvate or is it Captyvate? I've heard a few people saying Captyvate lately.
Yeah, call it what you want. Hey. Yeah, it's Captyvate, but I like that people pick up on the little subtle wordplay, the Y in there. So That's cool.
You just got back from Notion and Hardline. How's that been?
Pretty wild couple of weeks, eh? Like, as far as mountain biking gets in Australia, it's about as good as it's going to get. Like, started off with Cannonball as well. So you got those three events back to back to back within like just under 3 weeks. That is as good as it gets for mountain biking in Australia, I'd say. Gravity side of things.
It was like, I didn't do any of them, but like, it was pretty hectic watching you guys, like you, Nick Waygood, and a few other crew that did all three. It was just like, you guys were basically not home for a month. Is that pretty taxing?
I don't know. I don't actually think it was that taxing. Like, maybe it comes back to what we were saying just earlier about things coming and going in waves. Like, I don't really mind if I've got a month that's just flat out where all I'm really doing is traveling around and shooting. I'm happy for that to be the case. I think it would get to a point where it's like, maybe like 2, 3, 4 months, then things would start to get pretty taxing. And I have experienced like a couple of periods of my life that have been like that, but a month is chill, especially at my age. You know, I'm still quite young. I've still got plenty of energy, so might as well harness it for the better of the mountain bike community.
How old are you, by the way?
28.
Okay, sick. Yeah, young buck, still got plenty of time.
Yeah, so people tell me, hey, I definitely feeling like I'm getting older. A couple of mountain bike injuries and whatnot have definitely slowed me down to an extent.
So you said Threadbow was the first one there.
Yep.
What was it like going back to Threadbow after last year where you had those massive clips and everything kind of had a huge takeoff for
you? I've been to Threadbow so many times that it's almost like second home. So familiar with the trails, the conditions there. It just felt nice, honestly. there's definitely a particular degree of pressure when you go from working on like a pretty high profile project like that. Like for anybody that was unaware, I was working with Warner Brothers Discovery. So that would be 2023 Cannonball, so the 9th edition. And then coming back this year, not necessarily having that same workload was pretty nice, actually. Like my job was pretty chill. I definitely felt for a couple of other media folk that were there that were just like flat out for 5-6 days, just like shooting nonstop all day. Like I just focus on downhill and gravity stuff and freeride nowadays. Like if I get paid to film something else, then sweet. But yeah, I just went out for the downhill sessions and I almost felt I get this nostalgic feeling when I'm at Threadbow, and I think it's because some of the first mountain bike events and my fondest memories as a kid growing up riding bikes were at Threadbow. And that's how I felt. Like going back to Threadbow this year felt like I was a kid, for lack of a better term. It was nice. Yeah, I didn't feel as much pressure as one may believe.
But you're still shooting for like Vital and doing some stuff with the syndicate and doing a few things, right?
Yeah, I was still doing some work, but it's hard to describe it other than just this nostalgic feeling of. I guess I get that feeling most of the time when I'm out filming mountain bikes, honestly, because it's something that's carried on with me like my whole life, you know. So you go back to a place like Threadbow, you're just like, oh, this is just like being a kid again.
That's so sick.
The pressure is on for sure. Like you want to deliver good footage, you want to be in the right place at the right time. But it's a fine line. Especially if you're not necessarily getting paid the same amount of money that you were the year previously. The deeper you get into the game, the more you got to realize that there's a cost-benefit analysis that needs to be calculated. And if you're not getting paid top dollar, then nobody, even yourself, should expect that you're going to put in maximum amount of effort. You know, you need to realize that there's certain times where you can just be a little bit more chilled out and treat it like a child's probably not the right term, but childlike, you know, get a bit more experimental, just have a little bit more fun with it as opposed to just stressing out the entire event.
Yeah, I do notice like if you are getting paid more and getting paid for that certain product, you're shooting more, everyone's shooting becomes a little bit more safe because you got to
safe is definitely the term, man. Yeah, you get like these safety shots because you know that they're going to be easy to capture, the outcome's going to be good. But that doesn't necessarily nourish the soul. And I guess it comes back to that sort of like childlike creativity that happens where you don't necessarily have any like safety shots you want to tick off. You just want to experiment and have fun. And that's definitely how the past couple of events actually, like we want to tally up those 3 events of Cannonball into Hardline into Notion. Like I very much felt like the pressure was not as high as it has been previously.
Is it kind of hard to shoot Threadbow after so many years? Like I find it hard to shoot after going there like 2 or 3 times because everything looks exactly the same. So.
Yeah, you can probably say the same about most mountain bike trails and most environments. That's been a huge catalyst for me to travel so much and shoot. Just being in different environments and not necessarily having like repetitive style of footage or whatever. But yeah, it's definitely challenging. It helps to incorporate new techniques or new technology. Been experimenting with like some super zoom, super telephoto lenses lately.
Yes.
Like 400mm zoom lenses. And traditionally I shoot like everything super wide, like this camera right here that's recording to the side right now is a 16mm, so that's like basically as wide as it gets without being fisheye, to 35. So that's like that just stays on my camera the majority of the time. That's what I shoot with most of the time. So to challenge myself to shoot with something that's like the complete opposite of that just keeps things like fresh, interesting, fun. Even if you've been to a location, like I've probably been to Threadbow close to 20 times, I'd say now.
And then like going from Thredbo to Tasmania in like the span of 2 weeks is such a big change as well. Hey, like you got to kind of change things up because Thredbo is such an open, wide space than Tassie.
Oh, yeah, in terms of the trail or the action unfolding, or
just like both, like the trail and the landscape, for example, is like so different. Like the way you shoot and stuff is so. You have to change that up and kind of adapt, right?
So the beauty of mountain biking, I reckon, hey, like you've got to adapt to pretty much every scenario, and it's probably the reason why I've been so passionate about shooting mountain bikes and just the mountain bike community, riding a bike for the best part of my life now, like over half of my life. The variety, you know, you could go ride trails anywhere in the world, and they're probably going to be different to your home trails.
100%. So what was it like getting down to the first hardline? What were you kind of expecting, I guess? Did you have any expectations?
Expectations were met and exceeded. For sure, yeah. Anybody that's into mountain biking in Australia or even overseas, you know, if you've got the money and you've got the means to make it happen, I'd definitely encourage you to A, just visit Medina, and B, go to that hardline event, because none of the video footage that myself or Red Bull or anybody else are going to put up are going to do it justice to begin with. Medina itself, like you'd know this, Dazza, is one of the most naturally beautiful places that you can ride a bike on Earth. That's from what I've experienced.
100% one of the best, most unique spots in the world, for sure.
Yeah, so you carve some ridiculous trail down that forest. And you got a pretty good recipe for success right there. Like the trail was crazy. The riding was crazy. And I'm pretty fortunate, you know, I get to work with all these top athletes in the sport. And at the end of the day, like you can fanboy them as much as you want or whatever, but they're normal blokes. They're just exceptionally good at riding bikes. So to be able to hang out with them, spend some time with them, like find out a little bit more about like what their home trails are like in comparison to coming to Medina, or just talking about the intricacies of like Australian culture as opposed to what they're up to, etc. Like it's not that often that we have that many high profile mountain bike athletes just coming to Australia. So that in itself was pretty special experience for me.
It was definitely like the cream of the crop as well. Like, and they were ripping that track apart. It was pretty rad to watch from the outside.
Yeah, I just want to clarify something as well now that I'm thinking about it. Like there was a lot of discussion online about the trail not being technical. I haven't been to the one in Wales. From what I can see from the one in Wales, like that one is maybe more technical, but it's definitely a technical trail at Medina. 100%. It's not an easy trail. Like most of the what I would call linking sections that are between like the key features, your average rider's not even going to attempt to roll down through, let alone ride them at race pace. So definitely some weird misconception there about like the trail or like the technicality associated with it. I was surprised. Maybe I shouldn't be surprised about this, but I was surprised at how well the bike park staff and, you know, the administrators, the management, how well they handled all of the logistics of bringing this many people into this little ex-forestry town that would usually, I don't know, there's probably like 100, 200, couple hundred like full-time residents there. Some of them are full-time, you know.
I would doubt there's even that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the point I'm trying to make is like to be able to bring in all of those people and do so well at pulling off that sort of like infrastructural setup, it's pretty impressive. I found that really impressive because I think not just myself, but a lot of other people shared this degree of skepticism, just thinking, how are they going to do it? Like, how are they going to have enough showers, toilets, accommodation, etc. And sure, a lot of people had to go stay down in Hobart or whatever, but they did so well with everything at the bike park. Like I was, pretty blown away. And I've been to a lot of, well, not a lot. I've been to like 3 high-profile events there now. 2 of those have been international scale events. And the setup for Hardline was spot on, mate. It was real good.
I think like going back to the technicality and the setup of the track is it was their first year. Like they're not going to make it unrideable, and the potential for it being a terrible event when things are more technical is higher. So for them just to do something a little bit more chill, big jumps, they did what they did best, and they just made it happen for the first year. And then next year it's just going to build and build, I think is what's going to happen. Like give it 10 years, like what Wales has got, and it'll be unbelievable.
Yeah, I think you're right. It kind of lends itself beneficial to be building up to something as opposed to creating something that's just ridiculous. And then they're like, well, shit, how do we even make this harder than it is? It kind of allows room for growth, right?
Yeah. And being in Medina, like you can't just go to the hospital down the road. Like you don't want people axing themselves on that magnitude every 5 minutes. So
yeah, everyone's getting airlifted out of there, mate.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. 100%. I saw a dude get airlifted out of there for a snake bite. Like everything is an airlift. So just the logistics around it is probably what lent some of that track decision for sure.
Yeah.
What was it like filming there? Like it's a big Red Bull event. Like they've obviously got their own rules and they're known to be pretty strict, but what was it like rocking up and filming?
Mate, I was waiting for this question. Hey,
I've heard some things.
Notes written down.
Yeah.
It was hard. It was pretty challenging, honestly. Like I struggled to even get media accreditation. I would have got my email. I arrived there, I think on the Tuesday afternoon I arrived there, and the race would have been on the Saturday. There was a couple of practice sessions prior to that. And I'm like driving into Medina, probably about a half hour away from Medina, and I get this random notification pop up on my mobile phone, something like Red Bull Hardline media accreditation. I was like, well, fuck, sweet. Like I've already paid for my ferry and everything else, petrol, food, etc., to get down here, and you're only telling me this now, even though I've had to send follow-up emails for like last 2 months.
Yeah.
And there were so many other people that had no clue what was happening. Like I'm like pretty reputable like media within the mountain bike community here in Australia. And lots of people just had no clue what the hell was going on. And if I actually wanted to sort of like describe it in another way that might just be easier for people to understand, it's almost like a 2-tiered system. Right? You had anybody that was working directly with Red Bull or on behalf of Red Bull, and anybody else was treated definitely not the same as those people were. We were given a lot more strict regulations in terms of where we could be on the trail, especially when it came to like qualifying and race. We were given very strict regulations in terms of, you can't necessarily go here. I think they were even trying to discourage people from filming on the race day and posting footage early. Jasper De Seymour, like I don't really want to throw him under the bus necessarily, but I just think this is a great example of the type of bullshit that like us independent media here in Australia had to deal with. But he posted a clip sort of like congratulating Ronan Dunn on winning the race or whatever. He didn't even have media accreditation. He did have his cinema camera there.
Yeah.
You know, he's a Tassie local. Of course he's going to go to the race. Of course he's going to check it out. And he just wanted that footage for like archival purposes, and, you know, puts out a little like congratulations note to Ronan on Instagram. He gets a message from somebody else that's another photographer. It's not even a Red Bull staff, actually, which is even more strange. like one of the photographers that was working for Red Bull, messages Jasper and says, hey, mate, like Red Bull wants you to take this video down. And Jasper told me about this. And I'm like, mate, like for all anybody knows, you could be somebody there with an iPhone that's recorded that video clip. So to try and prevent somebody that's in that scenario from like posting something online just seemed real strange to me.
Was that before or after the live had gone ahead?
It was before, to be fair. And I can understand why there might be like a conflict of interest in that regard. But as I said, like what difference is it to the 1,000 other people that have been posting Instagram stories or Instagram posts or whatever, being like, this guy just won Red Bull Hardline. I'm here spectating. Like, to me, there is no difference in that regard because Jasper didn't even get media accreditation, which is another can of worms in itself, mate. It's like he is an incredible videographer. He lives in Tasmania and they denied him media accreditation.
Yeah.
So it kind of comes back to that two-tiered system that I was talking about where, like, if you're in with Red Bull, they were taking good care of you. You could access all areas, etc. Mate, I got told at one stage that I wasn't even allowed in the athlete tent. And a lot of these athletes I've known for like over a decade and worked with them, not just here in Australia, but other parts of the world, worked on video projects with them, etc. And this lady from Red Bull's like, sorry, you're not allowed to be in here. You're not an athlete. Yet there's all these physiotherapists and team managers and other media and stuff in this athlete tent. Like, lady, these are my friends.
Yeah.
None of the athletes wanted me to leave. Nobody asked me to leave except for this lady that works for Red Bull. And I think it's just kind of this like bureaucracy thing more than anything else. It's like they're going to throw their weight around because they work at Red Bull and they want to feel important about their job.
I wonder if there was like anything for being a spectator not to do stories or post anything about Ronan winning before the live.
What, in terms of you could sign a waiver when you went to the park or something like that?
Yeah, I'm not sure. But
I'd be very surprised, mate. What events are you going to? Like, mate, the Formula One Grand Prix was just on in Melbourne.
Yeah,
You're
true.
going to get every single spectator that walks through the gates to sign a fucking waiver saying that they're not allowed to post any video footage to their Instagram.
And well, like because Red Bull's broadcast was delayed by 3 hours.
Oh, yeah, I understand that.
Yeah.
I totally understand that factor involved in it. I just think that would be like kind of absurd to go through that
100%.
feat of getting everybody that's spectating to sign this waiver.
So what were you actually like? What did the accreditation actually give you? Like, was it anything?
Mate, the funny thing was it didn't even give me uplift access, the one that I had. I was just lucky that I knew staff at the bike park.
Yeah.
And I think just a classic case of if you look like you know what you're doing, then people aren't going to ask questions.
Yeah.
I'd just walk up to the lift with my bike, the uplift with my bike, just be friendly. Like I wouldn't be disrespectful or anything. I'd have a nice chat with the uplift drivers and stuff and be like, look, I really need to get up to midline. Is it possible to get a lift, please?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, no worries. There's only, as long as you check with the other athletes and make sure that it's cool to be on the bus with them. Yeah, or to go with the other general members of public or whatever. Nobody had a problem with that. Like, it got me a small little like packed lunch, which I'm grateful for. I love food, so it's like if you're gonna hook me up to food, I'm pretty happy about that one. Gave me like Wi-Fi access, which to be fair, I didn't use once the whole time I was there. I'm editing off-site from the bike park and XYZ. There were a couple little perks, but it just felt like there was definitely some weird sort of like politics occurring between like Red Bull media and any other types of media, and even people just being quite rude, essentially. Just saying, oh, you're not like, not this direct, but just acting like, oh, you're not part of the official Red Bull media crew, so fuck you, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. I felt the same when I was down in Derby shooting the EWS, and like I was probably one of the first people to do a media accreditation for it.
Oh,
Did all
mate,
my stuff.
the hoops they make you jump through as well was like pretty crazy. And I think that's been a big deterrent if I actually want to kind of go on a slight tangent. A bit of a deterrent to even go and try film UCI World Cups because, mate, if I had to jump through at least half of the hoops that I had to jump through for those Enduro World Cups in Tasmania just to go film World Cup downhill, I would hate it. Hey, this is not fun having to like abide by all these regulations that are going to hinder my productivity and hinder my creativity.
Yeah. Well, like I wasn't part of the top 10, so I wasn't allowed to ride the tracks. I wasn't allowed to do even on practice.
Yeah, I remember the fiasco, Darren.
Yeah, and like, so I was walking around the entire of Derby trying to get
which
photos.
is a big mission.
Yeah, it was unreal. It was fun, but like, I literally said to him, like, "What's this give me?" And they're like, "Oh, you get into the media like spots on the track." And halfway through the day, I sent him a photo of all the spectators standing in the media spots of the track because no one was there. Like no one was there, like dictating it, and it was in the shittest spot to shoot from.
Yeah, well, not to mention just accessing those spots would not be easy. Just to get to those spots on foot.
But like you'd get there and people were yelling at you because you're standing in front of them, and because no one knows what's going on, or they're just blatantly standing. It didn't provide any benefit at all. Like it was insane.
Yeah, in summary, mate, Hardball media,
Hardline,
Red Bull Hardline media accreditation could have not only been a more streamlined process, but they should have been way more transparent about the perks that it would actually entail, and B, what the criteria or credentials were involved in that. Like I had to hop on bloody LinkedIn, mate, and send messages to this lady that works at Red Bull being like, what's the criteria here? Like, where is the link to sign up? I'm like nagging this lady once a week for like 2 months.
Yeah, insane. But was it worth going to?
I don't mean to sound like a cocky bastard, mate. But it's like I feel like I'm pretty well qualified to go to an event that caliber and capture footage for the greater good of anybody that's not at the event.
Well, I think everyone that was there from Australia was definitely more than qualified.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But otherwise, mate, incredible event. Medina is an incredible place. If anybody hasn't been there, you must visit. Like, just make it happen. Do whatever you got to do. Put $5 away in a piggy bank for 3-4 years. Like, honestly, do whatever you got to do to go visit that place. Like, I know the temptation is real to go to somewhere like Queenstown or to Whistler in Canada or whatever, but Medina is a pretty special place, like on the grand global scale. And the fact that we have it here in Australia, albeit on a tiny little island to the south of us, pretty special.
It is rad. And like for me, if I fly there, it's 4 hours away, like from door to door. So
I was about to say, fucking hell, mate, how's the flight 4 hours from Adelaide?
The flight
is flying a little prop plane or something, brother.
Yeah, man. I've got my own little fucking single prop Cessna and we buzz over there. No, it's an hour.
I'm just going to double check. 29 minutes, mate. I was like, fuck, I need to check this camera because chances are it's just going to fuck out on us. Is that too bright? No, it should be fine. Should be fine. All right, is yours still recording?
Yeah, this A7S has been, this is an old one and they cracked it.
Right.
So it films like they've got the American software in it. So it films forever.
Oh, okay. Well, with that being said, audio sync, take 2.
You went to Notion as well. Like, what was Notion like, man? That looked fucking rad. That looked like a good time.
It's funny. Everybody's going to be listening or watching this podcast and just thinking, this guy loves to have a rant about Red Bull Hardline. Don't get me wrong. Hardline is a really good event. I really enjoyed my experience there. But Hardline and Notion could not have been more opposite in terms of the atmosphere, the terrain, even to an extent, being quite different. The way that it was organised, the scale of the event being a lot smaller and more intimate. There being, for myself anyway, I was pretty fortunate to not necessarily be a part of the official media crew. So I had like free reign to basically capture whatever I wanted, like total creative freedom. No race tape or whatever around being like, oh, you can't be on this side or whatever. Like, mate, for me, that's like the perfect setup to be filming, because you got a pretty consistent stream of like riders coming through. Everybody that's there, it's not a race. It's not even a competition. It's like rock up, ride your bike on these incredible jumps that are like nothing else that there is in Australia. Have a good time. Go as big or as small as you feel comfortable with. Nobody's going to judge you for that. Nobody's going to care whether you don't want to ride because it's too windy or whatever, because there's no pressure from a broadcast team to deliver a package. Or, mate, what an event. Seriously, Stu, Bikebot, and Baxter Mywell, and Rowan as well. Rowan's Sanders, I think, the bloke that owns the land, and all the sponsors coming on board. Like, I was saying to the boys, like, as we were like wrapping up for the final day and having a barbecue together, it's probably the best mountain bike event I've been to in a long time, in terms of atmosphere, in terms of the caliber of riding. Like, there was some pretty serious tricks and stuff getting thrown down on these jumps. The only sort of like shortcoming with the event was that we thought as a collective that there was going to be more high profile athletes. And I think that's why Baxter and Stu poured so much of their own money into the event.
Yeah.
But now that we've got a proof of concept, so to speak, I see that event like becoming quite successful into the future. There's not really anything like that in Australia. It's very similar to like Dark Fest or any of the Fest series that you can see overseas. Just a pure free ride jam.
Well, I suppose like all those riders that went will tell the other crew that were at Hardline to come and chill at this event.
Yeah, exactly. And like, mate, we both know how beautiful Tasmania is.
Yeah.
And I don't think it takes that much convincing, especially now that there's going to be footage coming out from this year's event. I don't think it will take much convincing for anybody that's making the effort to come to Hardline next year to say, well, I'm just going to put aside another 3 or 4 days to go and ride this event. It's only like a 2-hour drive away, 2 and a bit hours drive.
Yeah, and it looks super chill, super fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it looked like all the athletes were having a good time as well, like the ones that were there.
Yeah, they're having a great time, mate. Yeah, I didn't hear anything negative about the atmosphere, the hospitality, just the way that things are being conducted in general. Everyone was very happy about it. Like, you're obviously going to have struggles with weather. Like, we had 1 or 2 mornings where the wind was just crazy and it wasn't safe. But as I said, we're not in a position like Red Bull Hardline where they've got to deliver a podcast. Like, we have the flexibility to say, it's not safe, we'll just come back in the afternoon and ride then.
Yeah.
The only thing that I did with an event like that, and I had a conversation with Stu and Baxter about this, is that right now, part of the appeal about it is that it is such a small and intimate event. It's a fine line to step between like trying to expand it to the point where it can be potentially commercially successful and just keeping it like quite chill and quite core to like the scene of freeride, if that makes sense.
100%. Like, if you look at it, I guess like Dark Fest is good for a good like balancing point, because they don't have a bunch of spectators there at all. Like, and they just have good filming, good socials, and it looks like a really, really fun event for everyone involved because it's not massive and there's no huge commitments. And yeah, I think that's definitely the way to go.
Yeah, I don't want to be the type of like guy that's a fucking gatekeeper or anything, but I personally believe that spectators at an event like Notion would just be distracting.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
And that's part of the appeal of going to an event like that is that there are no spectators. And typically speaking, you're not going to have access to jumps like that outside of sort of like an event environment. So
unless you're in ACT where they've got those new jumps out at Stronglaw and stuff.
Yeah, even Medina, they build some crazy new jumps at Medina that are real fun as well.
It's getting there for sure. It's good to see Australia finally getting some big jumps and some.
Honestly, mate, the free ride scene in Australia is probably the thing that's impressing me the most in mountain biking right now, here down under. Like, there's a lot of athletes that are coming up. There's a lot of people that are taking it seriously. Maybe they've been inspired by so many BMX freestyle athletes coming out of Australia as well. Like, I suspect that could be the case as well. Because, like, the other day, for example, I saw, I think his name's Dane Folt. And he's from he's from like far north and you kind of on the Queensland border.
No, he's up Queensland, yeah.
And I saw him riding with Josh Dovey, who's like a top tier BMX rider.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
And you see those two sports like bouncing back and forth off one another. And I reckon it's so cool, man. Like downhill doesn't necessarily have downhill, even cross country and enduro. Like I don't feel like they have much overlap or like collaboration with other sports, whereas like slopestyle and freeride mountain biking are not just heavily influenced by BMX, but like the BMXers and the mountain bikers nowadays at least seem to be very happy to like ride with one another and bounce ideas back and forth and like progress with one another.
Well, even like some of our best, like Mikey Ross and Luke Parker, they're both from BMX.
Yeah.
And like they're riding mountain bikes. And then, Dane's a whole different beast. He's an animal, but he's just chill to ride bikes. Like that's all he wants to do. And then you got like Leroy Leslie, who's the most laid back human on earth, but will go and throw like a frontie off a flat drop any day. Like,
so both of them were at Notion.
Yeah, good.
And like, I guess I haven't really been doing my homework, and I like trying to detach myself slightly from the mountain bike community. I don't want to be fully immersed in what's happening because it just becomes like, I think the expression is keeping up with the Joneses, right? Like I don't need to know like who's on what team or what's happening all the time. But you get these kids like Dane and Leroy that just pop up to me seemingly out of the blue. Like I've got no clue who they are and they're at this Notion jam. Like, holy shit, like, have I been living under a rock? Really? And then you get to have a chat with them. And like Dane, for example, is like, you can tell like he comes from a good family, mate. Like, I'm not trying to knock anybody down or anything, but you can tell he comes from a good family because he presents himself so well. And he speaks real polite. Like having an opportunity to like meet him and like learn more about his story, like I see great potential in somebody like him on and off the bike, because you kind of like as an athlete, you kind of need that package nowadays. Kind of present yourself well and be a bit of a public speaker, etc. And Dane definitely strikes me as that type of kid.
He's very, very, very down to earth, but also very professional. Yeah. I was lucky enough to meet him and Leroy for we spent a bit of time together at both Hardlines like the last 2 years. And dude, they just, their skill is unbelievable. But yeah, as you say, like great off the bike. Chalk and cheese off the bike, but they're both really good. Chalk and cheese off the bike, but they go together like so well. Yeah. Unreal.
Yeah, on that topic, mate, you kind of need, I was thinking about this earlier. Connor Fearon and Troy Brosnan popped into my mind because I'm like, Dazzers from Adelaide. And those boys, they really pushed each other to the absolute limit when they were kids. Like when I was coming up filming mountain bikes, they were the two prodigies of Australia.
Mm-hmm.
And I think anybody that's not that familiar with Adelaide, there's not that much elevation. And the trails are kind of like, for lack of a better term, mate, they're subpar to what you're going to get overseas for like to train, for example. And you just think, how the hell do those boys come out of Adelaide and have done so well for themselves in terms of setting themselves up for a career in mountain biking as professional athletes? And I reckon it's just because they had each other to push one another.
100%. Yeah.
So then you've got that type of thing happening with like Leroy and Dane, for example. To me, that's just like a recipe for success.
It's healthy competition as well. Like,
yeah,
Troy and Connor are still mates. Like,
yeah, 100%. Yeah, they're not like bickering and fighting behind each other's backs or whatever. Like, they respect each other wholeheartedly.
But they're still competitive. Like,
yeah.
And that, yeah, as you say, man, like the longest run for them here, I think, is 1:45 if they're chilling, like in a race run. And then they go and race 3-4 minutes overseas. That unbelievable.
Is your camera still recording? Because I'm fucking blown away if it is, mate. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's been it's got a little hack in it. I bought it like this, but you used to be able to hack them so they could get around the 29 minutes.
Well, you just like put an SD card in there and you change the firmware or something.
Yeah. Because you know why it is for 29 minutes, right?
I mean, I haven't actually tested it in a while. I just remember the old cameras being like that, so I've never I don't have the balls to just leave that to chance. I just keep an eye on it. Like right now we're at 12, almost 13 minutes, so we'll get back to that later.
While we're talking about it, what are you filming on? I'm just interested myself.
Sony Alpha Series. Got a Sony A7S III right here. I've got the Sony A7R4 as well because I shoot lots of time lapse and lots of stills. So to have those like 8K raw, juicy images is pretty beneficial. Yeah, just the Sony Alpha Series, man. I came from a background shooting with the with like DSLRs when they first came into like videography standard, I guess you'd say, when they first had full HD. Got a Canon 60D.
Sick.
And then I transitioned to the Sony FS700, which is like this fucking rectangle shaped piece of the camera. 200 frames, full HD. Like at that point in time, mate, that was like, I'm talking like a decade ago now. That was the shit, man, for action sports. Like so many people. Like I know dudes that still shoot with those.
Yeah.
Just crazy to think. Like we're going to get onto a topic pretty soon about like image quality. And mate, that's a perfect testament to image quality, that you can shoot with a camera that's 10 years old and nobody, especially on a bloody well phone screen, mate, is going to know the difference, are they?
No. Well, what's his name from Cut Media put up something the other day on LinkedIn.
Oh, yeah, Stu Thompson, I think his name is.
Yeah, that's it. That's why I got Stu from Bikebot's name is Stu Thompson.
Yeah.
He put up something the other day like good content overrides good image quality every time. Because like you could shoot whatever on a potato, but as long as what you're shooting is cool, it's going to get more views.
Should we delve into this topic, mate? Because I got a couple of things I'd like to say about that.
For sure. Do it. Like you've obviously had that million you wish it was million view Instagram clip, which is shot fucking amazingly. But then like you see other people with like that little 3-second view thing that's on their iPhone that's probably got 2 million. Like it's such a weird concept.
Yeah, it is a fucking weird concept, mate. It is real weird. I'm not going to bother going into like the cliche stuff about like, oh, it's the content, it's not the quality or whatever. Because at the end of the day, mate, the camera's a tool, and like any other tool, yeah, it matters, but there's the right tool for a particular job. Like if you're going to try and film the Threadbow Fire Road with a wide angle lens, it's going to be a little bit tricky. You're only going to get like 1 or 2 seconds of a rider flying by. Whereas if you've got a big telephoto zoom lens, you could be stood 200 meters away, sniping them coming right at you.
Mm-hmm.
But for me personally, like having something that's portable, that's like good for traveling and flexible in terms of the application, like the way in which you're using it, that's key for me. Because, man, outside of filming mountain bikes, I film a lot of other stuff, and we'll get into that later in this conversation. But like I can use that same zoom lens, and I can also have a gimbal set up with a super wide angle lens on the same camera body. And like to have that amount of flexibility for me is like, that's what's important, right? It's just a perk that this camera right here just so happens to have incredible image quality as well.
Yeah. 100%. But like, I guess for like some young people coming up as well, like, and I see this even with some of the better guys, they get so stuck on gear. Like, oh, I've got to have this lens, or I've got to have this camera body. I've got to have all this to be good. But realistically, it's the same with bikes. If you just go out and do it more, you're going to get better.
Yeah, and you just get to a point where you get to a point where the gear you're using just can't keep up with your skill. And that's fair enough as well. Like, I don't know how common it is nowadays for people to start riding mountain bikes on a hardtail, but that's what I started off riding. And I told somebody this story the other day. Like, it got to a point where I just kept breaking derailleurs or slicing tires or puncturing tubes, to the point where, like, between my parents and I, like, saving money from a part-time job and my parents helping me out, I went and got a dual suspension mountain bike because I outgrew that bike, or outgrew that tool. So it comes back to what you're saying, just use what you got, like not abuse, but use the absolute shit out of it, mate. Like, use it as thoroughly as you can, maximize its potential. And you're going to get to a point where you're probably going to break it, and then you're like, well, shit, now I need something else anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, if you could see this A7S I'm filming on, because it's my backup, like, that thing is flogged. Like,
Is this scratched up?
Scratched up. There's no knurls left on like the speed dials. Like, it's polished in the corners from where I hold it. Like,
scratches are no big deal, mate. I wouldn't worry too much about it.
Oh, it still works, kinda. But yeah, it was just unreliable. Like, it just became unreliable. And then you upgrade, and you're like, oh, this is what I've been missing out on. It feels like you're cheating because you've got those skills.
That's another thing as well, is that especially anything to do with technology, as it advances and more functions are implemented and the technology refines, it's going to make your job easier. But it's also a question of, is this a job for you? Are you getting paid? Are you just an enthusiast that wants to take this seriously? Like, what stage are you at? And make a decision towards what gear you're going to use based off that. Because there is no shame in going out there with a mobile phone right now, today, and just setting it up on the ground, resting upon a rock, and filming yourself riding. Because I go out and do that plenty.
Yeah, I love doing that. It's super fun. There's a point where I get over having to set everything up to make it look good. I like to just chuck my phone down and do something random. Like, it's fun.
You get that lo-fi aesthetic.
Everyone loves the lo-fi. You did mention, like, you're, as a professional mountain bike videographer, like, you've obviously got to have a 9 to 5. What are you kind of doing outside of the mountain bike and action sports stuff?
It's funny you say obviously, because I don't know if that's like really that obvious to most people that would observe what I get up to. Like, social media, for starters, is all smoke and mirrors, mate. Like, people could still think I'm in Tasmania, but been home for like 2 weeks or whatever, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing for starters. The second thing that I want to touch upon just before I get into like my personal circumstances are that here in Australia, I feel like it is basically impossible to make a full-time income from just mountain bike related media. And I would even go one step further in saying action sports, because the best action sports filmmakers, photographers, graphic designers, creative minds in Australia, they are every single one of them that I can think of right now off the top of my head. And these people are at the top of their fucking game, man. Like they're as good as anybody else in the world. They're still doing commercials for Rolex, or they might be shooting high-end real estate, or they're doing something on the side to substantiate the money they're making from action sports. And I'm sure that extends just beyond media and creative people as well. I'm sure that extends to project managers or people that are doing logistics and administration for pushies.com or something like that. You know, like a lot of people in the action sports industries have to substantiate their income elsewhere in Australia. But the truth is, I feel like that's not the case in a place like Europe or North America, because there are so many more opportunities that people can harness in those markets, because the size of the market is larger than it is in Australia, right? So if I were to move to, say, for example, French Alps, the likelihood of me having a full-time income just from shooting mountain bikes would probably increase 10, 20-fold, just based off the fact that I'm at a logistical and geographical advantage to if I lived here in Australia. But obviously, like anything else, that comes with a trade-off, mate. You'd not be living in arguably the most beautiful country on earth with the most diverse. So for me, mate, I would rather live here in Australia, live an extremely comfortable life, and go and make my money elsewhere to support my passion for capturing action sports. And I'm pretty fortunate. Like over my career, I've managed to develop relationships and a reputation for getting shit done and being able to work with top brands in the action sports industry. But it's not enough to make a full-time income off it. And that's just the reality of the scenario.
100%. It is definitely like one of those things where it's a passion that you can kind of make a bit of extra cash on.
Yeah. Definitely.
Like there's people, you know, out painting houses on the weekends and then shooting top level commercials the next day. Like it's insane.
Yeah.
So
it's pretty crazy, man.
So what are you doing like as the side hustle?
Oh yeah, sorry, total fucking tangent, man, which is pretty classic for me, mate.
No, that's all good.
Mate, pretty mixed bag of commercial work in like all sorts of other industries. Hey, shoot heaps of time-lapse work. I've been shooting time-lapses for like 15 years. Like something about them just fascinates me. Just that that condensing of the passage of time and being able to showcase movement in what would just typically be quite still to the naked eye. So I've been getting a lot of commercial work, like shooting time lapses over the last couple of years, which has been sick. Like I've actually got I've got a business that I started up in 2020. Of all years you can start a business, of course, fucking 2020, mate. But yeah, that business is called Inspirreal Films, and that specializes predominantly on time-lapse work, and been pretty lucky in the short period of time since we established that to get some pretty large contracts doing work, like the largest contracts I've ever personally acquired as a freelancer or working with a small team. So like working in the mining industry or going to, man, I've been to a concrete factory and made a video about how they precast concrete drains that sit under roads. I've been to a factory that makes boots, Mongrel Boots, an Australian company. So went up to their factory in Sydney and filmed a bit of a walkthrough of their factory. And one perk I've definitely found to kind of working outside of the action sports industry, and you'll hear a lot of people say this as well, is that you get exposed to so many different scenarios, so many different industries, so many different experiences. And I often find that a lot of those experiences will lend themselves helpful to action sports filming.
Yeah.
Like you might have a sequence in a film that you're piecing together where you need to get some shots of an athlete hopping, the cliche, hopping in and out of the car, driving to the trailhead and leaving the car or whatever.
Yeah.
Because I've had experience filming with a supercars motorsports team. I traveled Australia for 2 years filming a supercars team. And mate, the mixed bag of shit that I would film for them, like all these weird sponsor activations, like they'd go to Hungry Jack's every race, the local Hungry Jack's, and they do like a poster signing, and we'd film a thing of like the drivers flipping patties. And it's like, mate, I never thought I was going to point my camera at those sort of experiences or interactions.
100%.
But every little experience that you get just becomes like this tool in your toolkit. And you whip that out whenever you need to. You're like, well, yeah, I'm filming this sequence of, I don't know, Josh Carlson. He's a local mountain biker here in Wollongong, like quite well known for commentating and those things. But he's an awesome rider, right? Worked on some stuff with him, and it's like he's got to hop in and out of this car, but because I have experience filming cars, those skills are going to transfer across to filming something that is predominantly about mountain bikes.
Yeah.
And that to me is one of the biggest perks of being diverse in what you're capturing and the work that you're doing, is that all these skills are interconnected.
Yeah, 100%. I rate that. You can't ever
Dazza, of course you rate that, mate. Some of the photos I see you post, it's like Shell petrol station, and then the next one we're going to have a bottle of chain lube. It's like, mate, I know that you appreciate the diversity, but it just fucking sucks that social media punishes you for that diversity, isn't it?
Yeah, but I don't really care about socials. I just post shit I like. Whatever happens, happens.
I could definitely go off on another tangent right now in terms of that social media one, but we won't bother right now.
It is cool. We got a clip of Grant when we were in Nationals a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, but we were at Glenrock, and he just sent it down this fire road. It was unreal. And I'm like,
oh, is that the one that got co-posted by Vital MTV?
Yeah. I'm like, I've seen Ty do something on a fire road. That's and we sent it to them, and then it hits 150K, which is pretty sick. But I didn't care that it hit 150K. I care because Grant got seen by 150,000 people.
That's another thing you gotta switch that frame of mind, don't you, mate? Sometimes to make it less about you and more like this is a fucking million people that could have never seen mountain bikes, or even if 10% of those people have never seen mountain bikes, and they might want to get into mountain bike. That's pretty fucking cool, isn't it?
Or one person that thought their mountain bike journey was over has seen Grant ripping like he's on a mountain bike in that thing, and they're now inspired to go and do that. It's more important than a number. You know what I mean? So
I've got a pretty fucking cool story about Grant, and to be honest, I've never met or spoken to the bloke, so this might be a little bit strange for me to even say this on camera. But when I was a kid, my first memory of mountain biking, period, just of the existence of mountain biking, was a magazine cover. And Grant was on the cover, mate. He was doing this stupid drop at the Red Bull event that was in Jindabyne in early to mid 2000s. And that was my first ever exposure to the sport of mountain biking was him. I remember seeing that in a local newsagent and picking up that magazine and being like, hey mum, can I get this magazine? This looks pretty cool. And at this point, I'm already into riding BMX around and skateboarding through Tony Hawk's Pro Skater and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, shout outs to Grant, man. What a fucking living legend. For anybody who's kind of unaware of what the adversity that he's had had to face, then yeah, definitely go and do a bit of a Google search or social media search for Grant Allen, because he's a certified GC, I'd say, mate. I haven't even had a conversation with him, and I reckon he's a GC.
Just waiting to have a conversation with you, mate. It's unreal. But
yeah, I look forward to it, mate. I'll just be a little fucking fanboy. How you telling him that story?
But that photo is iconic. Like, that was the photo for a long time. Yeah. Man, Matt Holmes nailed it. Yeah. Lots of stories.
Was that a Holmesy banger?
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Oh, mate.
The real orange one.
Yeah, what a legend.
Yeah. Yeah, that's iconic. Unreal. I'm pretty sure it was a Holmesy photo because it was for A and B. And yeah, the orange from all the fires and the smoke, unreal.
Yeah. Just give me a moment. Let me check. Mate, 31 minutes. I can't believe it. I'm not going to test my luck on this one. Stop and start. Audio sync number 3. There we go.
Do you have any thoughts on like long form versus short form video? Like, do you shoot long form stuff? Like anything over, say, 6 minutes, 7 minutes?
I shouldn't I? Yeah, I really should. Just give me a moment here, mate. Yeah, I definitely should shoot more long form stuff, but there's just so many logistical factors involved. Mostly money more than anything else, mate. I mean, the sad thing is that I grew up watching long form films. Like people like Clay Porter, who's probably my biggest inspiration to pick up a camera. And then the New World Disorder series. How am I word salading this? The New World Disorder series as well.
Yeah.
So I personally enjoy the format. Like I love the format. It's a shame that it's a bit of a dying art nowadays. Quick little anecdote, actually. I just spent that month away on the road pretty recently, came home, and a couple of weeks earlier I saw that Clay Porter, Brett Reader, and a bunch of other people like cinematographers and writers, etc., had put together this film that was on Brett Reader's YouTube. I load up my YouTube. I get like 30 seconds through this video that I've been waiting like weeks to watch, and a fucking YouTube ad pops up, mate.
Gonna get on that premium.
That was the main catalyst for me to get premium. Like I've thought about it for ages, and especially because of my field of work, like it makes sense to kind of like have that as my streaming platform of choice. You know, I don't really. It's ironic that I say I like long form stuff because I don't even pay for Netflix. I'm pretty sure my girlfriend's family pay for it or something, and we just use that. Yeah. And my brother pays for like Disney Plus, and I just watch like Simpsons and How I Met Your Mother on that. So long story short, mate, I'm watching this new Brett Reader film on YouTube. This fucking ad pops up, and I'm like, I can't handle this any longer. So I got premium just because of that. Just because I don't want to sit down to watch an 8-minute long film of a mountain biker and have to watch an ad every minute or two.
Yeah.
So 100%. I guess it's kind of a testament to like, it's funny that 8 minutes is even considered long form nowadays. But if you go to my Instagram or you look at the work that I've been posting for the last couple of years, it's very rare that you're even going to find anything that I've put together that would be longer than like 60 seconds.
Yeah.
So I just think it's an ironic scenario. The whole sort of media landscape at the moment is, I think it's almost beyond the transitional phase. Like things are very much short form nowadays.
100%.
In terms of the way that things are produced, in terms of the way that things are delivered and received by the audience, things have just transitioned to being short form, and there are perks and there are negatives to that as well. And I've got a short attention span like a lot of people do nowadays. And I find myself actively having to instill better behavior in myself in terms of my attention span. And part of that is making an effort to watch longer form pieces, even if they're just like 15 minutes to 30 minutes or something like that. That's kind of the sweet spot for me. You know, I'm like happy to sit down and watch some obscure documentary about, I don't know, infrastructure in Melbourne or something like that.
Yeah.
I would prefer to do that than just keep scrolling through my phone. But mate, the last year or two, like I've definitely been thinking about working on a long form project, like here in Australia specifically, like, and I guess just the logistics of going elsewhere are ridiculous. But just the logistics involved with accomplishing a project, even here in Australia, are absurd. And the two main hurdles that you're going to kind of come across are like the funding and just 100%. Organizing everything. Like, mate, look on a map, see how fucking big Australia is. And let's say I want to go and film a segment with Sam Hill, who lives on the other side of the country to me. That's like, by the time I factor in excess baggage and stuff, that's like 2,000 Australian dollars in flights, which is like over $1,000 US just for flights.
Yeah.
Then I might be able to do things a little bit cheaper, like if he's gracious enough to have me stay at his house for a couple of days or whatever to film. But then even that's not enough, you know, at the level I'm working at nowadays, I want to get other people on board and I want to pay them. So that's like I've got to pay for their flights. I've got to pay for their time to not just come to potentially edit, etc. Like, I don't think people quite realize, especially if we have any overseas listeners right now, the logistics involved with mountain biking in Australia in general. Let's just take even mountain biking out of the equation. Let's just say you want to go on a leisurely holiday to the other side of Australia. Look on a map and see how bloody big it is. Like, it's not that straightforward. So, long story short, mate, I have been tossing around with the concept of a long-form project, a mountain bike film here in Australia about Australian athletes. I don't want to disclose any more than that.
Yeah.
But it's just borderline impossible, mate. When you're trying to juggle all these other expenses that pop up in day-to-day life.
Yeah.
Industry being so small here and in a phase in which it's contracting as opposed to expanding.
Yeah. It's
borderline impossible right now, mate. I'm not going to be able to go to any mountain bike brand here in Australia and say, hey, how do you guys feel about chucking in $5,000 to help with just covering some flights to go and film your athletes? Probably like, why the fuck would we spend our money on that?
Yeah, exactly. It's an insane time.
It's difficult, man. Like I have huge respect for companies and people overseas because it's not happening in Australia. It's more like places like Canada, the US, like I guess the main sort of Schengen zone of Europe, where these things are actually happening, where like there are companies that are willing to invest like tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars into a mountain bike film, like a long form sort of mountain bike film. Because that's not happening in Australia anytime soon. You would just have, mate, I would just have trouble contacting Monster Energy and being like, hey, I want to film with Troy Brosnan, Connor Fearon, and Dane Folk. The three of those boys are all sponsored by Monster Energy here in Australia. Let's add Jack Meyer into the mix as well while we're at it. Monster Energy is going to be like, yeah, cool. Like they're all sick athletes, but the market's still Australia.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it doesn't translate to that much on the international scale.
Yeah. It's such a it's a hard spot to be in for sure. But that's why you need that side hustle is to.
Pretty much, man. Yeah. Yeah.
Because you got to fund your own stuff. Like it's the same thing as I get some help for this, but most of what I do is pretty much me spending money to do it. Like it's insane.
Prime example. All the expenses for me to get to Thredbo Cannonball Festival, Red Bull Hardline, which includes a ferry ride that's $1,000 Australian dollars.
Yeah.
And I'm just lucky I have a van as well, by the way. So I can be a bit of a dirtbag for like a couple of days and go without a shower or go without like the creature comforts. Like I've still got electricity and like everything I need to cook meals and stuff in my van. So I'm pretty fortunate in that regard. But at the end of the day, I have to pay for all my own expenses. And I'm just pretty lucky that at this stage in my career, inside and outside of the mountain bike industry, that I have the reputation in which I can actually secure work that doesn't pay absolute fucking peanuts at these mountain bike races. And I can go and I can make my expenses back for a month on the road. Like, don't get me wrong, mate. There's not a day that goes by where I don't consider myself lucky to be in that position. But it's kind of like these slopestyle riders at Crankworks Rotorua are going on strike. Mate, sometimes I feel like going on strike and saying, you know what? I'm never fucking filming a mountain bike race again. Because the amount of bullshit that you have to go through trying to chase up people at fucking Red Bull for 2 months to get media accreditation and chase up work. At that point, mate, I'm basically getting paid less than minimum wage.
Yeah, it's insane.
So you have to be pretty bloody passionate about it and just a super fan of the sport like I am to even consider going through this shit.
Mm-hmm. Good motivation.
Yeah, kids, you can go through like 15 odd years of experience filming mountain bikes and you'll end up in the same position I am.
It is cool.
It's not all doom and gloom, mate. Like, I really appreciate the opportunities I've been given in the mountain bike industry. And I do this because at the end of the day, I'm a fan of the sport.
Yeah.
And I have noticed the sport grow here in Australia quite a bit just in my short existence within the sport. Like, I thought about it earlier today, 16 years I've been riding mountain bikes. I'm sure there's plenty of other people out there that might be listening to this right now that have been riding for 20, 30 years here in Australia, and they can probably resonate the same sentiment as me, that it's pretty cool to see the way that things are progressing in Australia for mountain biking.
100%. I did have a question about how you actually get the job. So, like, is there a process like that you go through to get paying clients, or are people coming to you? Like,
are you talking specifically in mountain biking or just in general?
Oh, even in general, like, I guess because they're probably pretty much the same, but like,
yeah, like, it's funny because I feel like the mountain bike community, and this happens with like most like niche sports, definitely helps to know the right people.
Yeah.
And like, people are going to argue the same about a lot of different industries, but I feel like because the pie is so small, just in the mountain bike industry in general, worldwide, and you talk about Australia, mate, far out. It's pretty, like, for lack of a better term, it's getting pretty saturated in terms of there are people that want to make money shooting mountain bikes. And I'm not gonna say that anybody shouldn't have the right or the privilege to do that, because that's fine. Like, I'm okay with that. But there's only a finite amount of work going around, right? So it definitely helps to know the right people in the mountain bike industry here in Australia. If that's what you're chasing work, then word of mouth is probably going to be your biggest friend. You can have all the views from Red Bull Hardline in the fucking world, mate, and it might not necessarily translate to anything. So
100%.
So how would I actually go about getting hired? As I said, in the mountain bike community, more often than not, I'm approached by the brands.
Yeah.
It's less about me doing client outreach, and it's more like Maxis will come, or like the Australian distributor for Maxis will come to me and say, we're launching a product, can't film it in the Northern Hemisphere, everything's snowed over. Australian terrain's perfect for this. What can we achieve here? First of all, I'm going to say, what sort of money have you got to spend on this? And then we'll reverse engineer something from there. That's one thing that I'm really not that happy about in the mountain bike industry. I feel like it's really bad. You hear athletes talking about this as well, is that there's not enough transparency in terms of figures, in terms of how much money people are willing to spend on particular things, in terms of salaries and stuff like that. Like, I'm sure it's quite difficult for somebody going into a job as like a bicycle mechanic, for example, because that type of knowledge is just not like, it's not unionized, it's not like publicized. So it's kind of like, it's always a weird topic talking about in the mountain bike industry. Whereas I find some other industries, mate, people don't, they know they're going to have to spend money. They don't tiptoe around a conversation about money. So that's, sorry to go on a little tangent here, but that's been a huge perk about working in outside industries. Has been seeing the way that they handle these conversations. Things tend to be a lot more transparent.
Yeah.
And just to loop back around in terms of like brands approaching me, I don't tend to make proposals within the mountain bike industry because more often than not, I know that there simply isn't enough money floating around the industry here in Australia. So I just feel like, and this may be kind of like a weak attitude for somebody to have, but I feel like it's more a realistic attitude to have. It's like, why am I going to spend the effort putting together a 5 to 10 page proposal? That's going to take me the best part of a day to do, probably longer, for a brand to probably knock me back for a couple of $1,000s of budget.
Yeah.
When I can go to any other, like not any other industry, but a lot of other industries and get paid good money for putting together a proposal.
Yeah, exactly.
So a lot of the time, like, it's just brands approaching me. And I've been pretty lucky to have built that reputation and to have to build really good connections in the mountain bike industry. And you hear people give this recommendation all the time or this advice, how important it is to build connections. I feel like in an industry like mountain biking, super important. The industry is so small. Like, it's actually, man, it's kind of crazy how interconnected the industry is. You'll be at an event like the Notion Jam and you'll talk to somebody that, like, the person could be completely unassuming and it just so happens they worked with one of your best mates. It's like, oh, okay, you also know this person.
It's very tight.
Which is fine. Like, I'm happy with that. It creates a sense of community.
But it makes you, like, the word travels quick. So if you're...
Yeah, it does, man. It does for sure. Yeah, for better or worse.
Yeah. But yeah, so people are coming to you for that stuff, which is pretty rad. I think that's...
Pretty much, yeah. That is rad in itself. I'm kind of at a stage with shooting mountain bikes where unless I see it as being an opportunity that I'm going to thoroughly enjoy and invest my own money, I'm waiting for the brands to approach me, mate. I'm not going to do the whole run around of trying to contact X, Y, and Z brand and pitch to them and stuff like that. When the success ratio is just way lower than other industries, and I can make my money elsewhere and then just pour that into going on a month-long working holiday down to Tasmania and Thredbo, etc., and just treat it not like a job. You know, just have fun with it, man. I'm going to loop all the way back to the start of this conversation and saying that I can go to Thredbo, film there for a week and not feel burned out, not feel stressed. Treat it like I was when I was a kid, you know, just having fun. Because I make my money elsewhere and I don't have to think, oh, fuck, I need to deliver to this many riders and work for half the price of what I would usually get paid in X, Y, and Z industry. Like, I don't have any of those problems anymore, mate.
Yeah. Well, that's the dream, right? Like,
more or less, yeah. Because at the end of the day, mate, I want to go to Cannonball and I want to go to Hardline and I want to capture some of the best mountain bike action that the world is going to see. And to be fair, you look at the metrics of some of the stuff I'm posting online and other people seem to agree with that, you know. They seem to think that's incredible what these athletes are doing. And that's how I feel when I'm capturing this stuff.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's just incredible that I can even lay my eyes upon that.
It's always fun. Like, that's one of the biggest rewards of like getting out onto track and shooting is watching the riding. Like, I get more excited by that. Like, my mate Jack hates filming near me because I'm fucking hollering and just super excited by everything, and I just ruin all his audio. Yeah, just ruining it. But
next time I'm filming a Vital Raw, you are not allowed in my vicinity.
100%. Unless you just want me hollering. But
I'm just thinking about, because I listened to your podcast with Stu, Bikebot, and he was talking about like the whole concept of there's always going to be somebody that's younger and more hungry to do shit for free just because they want the experience. And mate, I almost kind of feel like what I just told you then is borderline a representation of that sentiment, for better or worse. But the difference for me is that I'm not going to go to these events and lower my price just because I'm desperate to get work. I'm just fortunate enough that I can make my money elsewhere.
Yeah.
And that I don't necessarily have the financial stress of trying to regain all of my money by just doing shit half-assed and getting paid peanuts, basically.
Yeah. So you shot a lot of the Vital Raw stuff over those events. Like, do you just shoot with your mic off your camera, or are you miking up the bike or anything? Have you done anything like that?
Dude, I just take a moment to think about the logistics of having a bike at an event mic'd up, let alone all the bikes of every athlete mic'd up, Darren.
I meant like if you're doing like a single rider.
To give you a non-sarcastic, non-fuckwit answer, Darren, I use a shotgun mic on the top of my camera. So shotgun mic is just like a directional mic and just capture audio in the direction at which it's pointed. And I just keep that bad boy strapped to my camera the whole time. The only time that I use like a little lapel microphone is if I'm doing like a piece to camera. I'll just quickly whip out this little Rode video mic, like a wireless microphone, and clip that onto the athletes. And even then, in certain scenarios, you just don't have the luxury of time. The audio that you record with just the inbuilt microphone in, especially these cameras, is trash. Like, it's like you would never really rely upon that. You would always want kind of a secondary audio recording. But if you plug a microphone into that, that's the sweet spot right there, mate. That works for me perfectly fine. Shout outs to Rode as well, Rode Australia. Like, I've been pretty lucky to have developed a relationship with them over the years. I've always used their audio products. They're arguably the leading microphone manufacturer for a lot of different applications, not just for cameras, but for podcasting and stuff like that as well. So, yeah, I've like formed a partnership with them, and like pretty lucky they send me out a bunch of free stuff every couple of years as like a bit of a gear upgrade. So yeah, shout outs to Rode, bunch of legends. Hey, Aussie company as well, which is like, it's becoming pretty rare in today's day and age for there to be like an Aussie made company. So
yeah, I'm a huge fan of this stuff. Like, this mic is going on 5 years this week, I think.
Yeah, not surprised you got a Rode, mate. Say about podcasting.
But the brackets, like the little plastic brackets on them, love to snap. Like, after a while, they just degrade. Like every 18 months.
Hook up, brother.
And they just send you out like a new one. Like, they're well
so
past
you
warranty.
Got replacements from?
Yeah, they just send me out fresh ones.
How good's that? I think they're the type of company. I know we're kind of straying away from mountain biking, but I'll make this relevant for everybody. I'll loop back around, right? Rode are the type of company that they would rather send you out spare parts and know that you're going to keep using that microphone for another 5 years and have a good perception of their brand as being a sustainable brand, as opposed to just being like, nah, sorry, we don't have any free parts. Go and buy another one. And that to me is a huge problem in the mountain bike industry. Something that I really don't like about e-bikes right now. I think they really need to get that technology a bit better in the sustainability aspect, is that the mountain bike industry is so fucking unsustainable, mate. Like, mate, I will run a tire until it's practically fucking bald. And people come up to me and be like, hey, you realize your side knobs are coming off your tire? And it's like, Well, yeah, I know that. And yeah, I could go out and buy another one, but I also feel fucking bad about just like, where do you draw the line? Like, I'm not a racer. I don't need maximum traction. So what am I going to do? Go, like, I ride pretty much every day. What am I going to do? Go out and buy a new tire every month?
Yeah. Insane.
And not have any way of recycling those. Like, I've been to local bike shops and been like, do you guys recycle any parts? Like, is there any way I can recycle a derailleur or any way I can recycle a tire? And it's like, no, not that we're aware of. And it's like, sure, I understand it costs money to recycle stuff, but how fucking long are we going to go through this cycle of not trying to reuse and reduce our waste within the mountain bike industry? And I see certain brands that do a real good job of it, but on the whole, I feel like people are pretty half-assed about it, man.
100%. It's one of the like least ecological businesses in the world. For something that uses no fuel. Like, all you have to do is build 3 kids' bikes, and then you'll realize how much plastic is used.
Yeah, that's
in the bike industry
as well, mate. Fucking hell.
Like, literally, you'd fill up skip bins like every week full of fucking bike packaging. It's getting better, but like, yeah, unreal.
I'm gonna do a little stop-start on this one, Dazza, and I reckon will pretty much get us through the entire call from here. Because that'll be like, fuck, that's almost 2 hours, mate.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's been long.
I talk, can't I? Jesus Christ. Right, hang on. Audio sync number 4. Let's fucking go, brother.
We might actually start wrapping it up, I think. Like, we'll keep it.
Feel free. I don't know if you got any like key questions you need to ask.
There was a question from a friend of mine when I did a little shout out.
Shit, yeah.
He's
one of these.
What's his name? Valli Hoel, who's a Hack Media. I love his media name.
Yeah, sick. Well, thank you, Matty. I'm yet to become acquainted with you, mate, but thank you in advance for a question. I appreciate it.
You will get acquainted with him. He's a young shredder. But it's funny, like, he's got a like relatively cheap like old camera, just comes out and shoots stuff, and then like it's amazing. And like the first time he did a video, me and my mate Jack, like, we're just like, we give up. We're not going to any more races. This guy's got it done. You guys can hassle him for video clips. Like, he's amazing. But he wanted to know, like, what is your process on like color grading, or like how do you go about color grading on your videos? Because I think he's super creative like that. So
this is a tricky question because I actually receive a lot of criticism about the way that I color grade. Like, some people think it's like, it's a very love-hate outcome, I reckon. Hey, a lot of people have said, oh, I love these colors. They're so vibrant. And I definitely up the saturation quite a bit, for lack of a better term. Not just getting the saturation slider, but there's a bit of trickery that happens in the curves.
Yeah.
So to the point where, like, I will isolate particular colors and pump more saturation into certain colors because I want to achieve a certain feel, or I might want the overall image to be slightly warmer than what it would naturally be. So I'll go to the orange on the curves, and you'll have different parameters. You'll have like hue versus luminance. Luminance is brightness. Hue versus saturation. Saturation is how much of the color or how little is being introduced into the scene. So let's say, for example, I want to introduce more. I've got like some orange right here that I'm just looking at right now. If I want to introduce more orange into that scene and kind of make the overall scene more warm, I will go to the hue versus saturation. I will use an eyedrop tool, select the orange, and I'll drag that up a little bit to introduce some more like warmth or orange into the scene. I don't really like traditional color grading or aesthetic. I like heavy contrast. I like colors to pop.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily like black and white either. Like, I understand why people use that in an artistic sense, but for me personally, I see in color, and I assume the vast majority of other people see in color as well.
Yeah.
I try to document and showcase things that are fairly true to life. I want there to be a lot of color in my scenes. Sure, there'll be particular moments where things will be a bit more dull in day-to-day life. But even those types of scenarios don't capture too much. Like, you'll probably notice in my work, like, things are pretty bright, things are pretty colorful. And I try and play off that sort of aesthetic as much as possible, just adjust like particular parameters like the contrast and the overall saturation of the image in order to really boost those aspects of the image.
Yeah, I think there's it's one of those things, how many photographers does it take to change a light bulb? And it's like one will change it and everyone else will say how they could do it better, because there's so many variations of what people think is good. And I love throwing shade on some things. Like, that's just who I am. But as long as it's true to color and looks good, then yeah, I think it's pretty rad.
I'm gonna be completely upfront with people and saying that, like, color grading is probably my weakest aspect of my filmmaking process. It's something that I usually save until almost last in the entire process. I'm doing like motion graphics or like little bits of like sound design, because I almost get like a little bit daunted by it as well. I'm not that great at it. And I feel like the possibilities comes back to what you were saying. How many photographers does it take to change a light bulb? Like, you could go in any which direction basically, and somebody is not going to like the grade. Somebody out there is going to watch it and be like, don't like the way you've graded that color. It's like, well, yeah, that's fair enough. I'm not here to please everybody. At the end of the day, mate, honestly, I do what I feel looks good. Other people don't like it, they're going to fucking tell you, aren't they? And if other people like it, they're probably still going to tell you. So as long as you're happy with how it looks, and if you're not happy with how it looks, then learn how to change it.
Yeah, exactly. There are some, like I see, where red tape ends up like pink with some writers, and or like greens are just like ridiculously blown out. But I think that settings in the camera.
Yeah, the crazy thing with that as well, Dazza, is that, like, we could look at that and think that's fucked. Like, that red tape is like, that's not pink. Why is that pink in there? Mate, that's, at the end of the day, I look at shit like that nowadays and I'm like, well, that's a stylistic choice. I never look at that shit and think, that's bad color grading, that person's footage sucks balls because the tape is pink. I never think that way anymore, because I realize that somebody, for whatever reason, has made that choice. I don't necessarily agree with that choice or the way that it's executed, but part of me is curious as to why that choice was made. I'm way more curious nowadays than I am, I don't know if judgmental. Negative is the right term. I'm way more curious than negative.
Yeah. That's a good way to be. Like,
you're with anything in life, really.
Should probably
There's
take
so many things
I
get frustrated at that surface level, and I'm like, well, hang on a minute. Why is it like this?
Exactly. Let's say you're talking to like a young Matty or an up and coming photographer. What advice would you kind of give them to get into it and like become a good shooter?
I'm pretty sure I heard Stu say this. I'm pretty sure you hear like most people that have like pursued a creative career in any capacity. Just experiment with and shoot, create with any subject matter, any type of camera. Just be open to just doing weird shit. Just be open to trying things a different way. Be completely open to just, at least in your own mind, failing miserably Because it kind of comes back to what I was saying before, like you're always going to get people that are going to look at what you're doing and think, oh, well, that's a bit of a failure. I think it's more important that you are recognizing that as a failure based off your own analysis than anybody else's analysis. Because that's just their opinion. If you look at something and you're like, well, that's a failure because of this, this, and this, that'll give you a hell of a lot more closure than just taking somebody else's opinion.
Yeah, 100%.
What's another good little piece of advice? Hey, just shoot everything honestly. Shoot everything and anything that interests you. Like I've been through phases, and there is no other way of putting it than a phase of like shooting just urban stuff and just like you can see all these photos and stuff up here. I've been through phases of like going into Sydney City and going on rooftops, like taking photos and exploring urban environments, shooting portraits, shooting cars. Just don't be afraid to give that type of thing a go, because those skills are eventually going to creep in to whatever you're shooting.
Yeah, 100%. Is there anything you would have done different or changed up until now?
Fuck, that's definitely the type of question it's like easier to answer when you have like time to think over it.
I can't say on the spot.
Is there anything that I'd do differently? I think part of me should have a lot of people knock film school. And in retrospect, I don't necessarily think going to film school is such a bad thing.
Yeah.
Especially if you can just go, like here in Australia, we have this thing called TAFE, which is like tertiary education that's organised by the government and funded by the government. And it's not like a private entity like going to university would be. It's like government accredited courses and government funded, right? At TAFE, they have like certificates for screen and media. Even just doing something like that and paying attention in that capacity, something like very entry level. If I had the ability to do that before I was even eligible to go to TAFE, that would be pretty handy, you know? I just think don't be afraid to get some kind of like formal education, because the alternative to that is trying to figure it all out on your own or through this fucking mismatch of different resources, like just various YouTube videos and like School of Hard Knocks, basically. And if you can avoid having to go through all that bullshit and you can have somebody like show you the way through all the little technicalities, that probably would have speeded up my process a hell of a lot in terms of more just technical things than anything else.
Yeah.
I'm a pretty firm believer that either you, like especially when it comes to filmmaking and photography, you either have a creative eye or you don't have one. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that, mate. Like there are some people that are going to be way fucking better at working on a car or a mountain bike than I am, because that's what their brain is wired to be good at.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think if you're in a position where like you've got a creative eye for something, just don't be afraid to do some kind of like formal education associated with that. It's probably just going to streamline your technical understanding of things. Like the amount of bullshit that I've had to learn about like specific file types and editing and sound and like things like color grading, for example, that you're just learning as you go, as opposed to just doing a chunk, like a unit of work. That would be my main regret, mate, is not like, I don't know if going to film school is the correct term, but just doing some kind of like formal education. But to be mate, like 10, 15 years ago, those type of resources didn't even exist online. There were no master classes from your favorite filmmaker that would teach you from the get how to how to conceptualize and execute a film production. Like that didn't exist when I started. So yeah, kids, harness the internet because you got so many resources now. It's actually bullshit. How much there is to learn at your fingertips just through a phone. It's crazy.
Exactly. Last question. Always an interesting one, but like if you're at an event or like you're running low on all energy and you don't want to get out and film, or you got to do something you don't want to do, is there anything like you do to get motivated? Like to listen to music, or you got anything?
Yeah, dude, I've heard you ask other people this on the potty, so it's kind of, I've had to think about it, and I didn't even have to think that long and hard about it because this is kind of an ethos that I carry with me every day. Is that I'm from a pretty working class town where most people are like blue collar workers. Like they either work in the mines close by or they work in a bloody huge steel manufacturing facility in Port, like one of the biggest in Australia. So there's a lot of people that are slaving away, mate. Like they're working fucking hard, real hard. And honestly, a lot of those people, I look at them, I'm like, fuck, I'm a pussy, man. Like I'd like barely last a day in those working conditions. Yeah. The point what I'm trying to make is that I observe people in those circumstances and I think to myself, you're so lucky not to have to go and work as a plumber or an electrician or a roofer, like rebuilding somebody's roof on their house or something like that. Like you're so lucky that on your shittest day as a mountain bike filmer, you're still out in a forest. You might be getting pissed out on, you're worried about your gear getting damaged and stuff like that. But you're still doing something that you love. You're still doing something that you enjoy. Even if I'm in a way more monotonous circumstance, like I'm at some factory filming boots getting made, not to throw shade at that company or anything, like I still find that process somewhat interesting, but it's not peak level of excitement. And at the end of the day, it's work. You're getting paid for it, and you would never really go out of your way to be in that environment other than getting paid, right? Yeah, I don't know, just little circumstances, something, a piece of gear might break or something like that. You know, something eventually is going to make you feel a bit down. And then you're just like, fucking beats bricklaying, beats working underground mines and potentially dying in a shaft or something like that, you know? Like, it's always, for me, it's always a game of comparison. If I'm ever feeling shit, mate, about my work and what I'm doing and the trajectory that I'm on as a human or for my career, I think to myself, fuck, it could be a hell of a lot better. And honestly, one more thing, mate, because I struggle a lot with anxiety and imposter syndrome. I'm sure you'll hear a lot of other creative people talk about these.
Everyone, yeah.
And something that really helped to put things into perspective for me, I'm pretty sure it was the start of last year. This is my chalkboard over here, not my chalkboard, my corkboard, my ping board. And just as like when I was putting together like case studies and updating my website, etc., I thought, fuck, I wonder how many views all my videos have got over the years. So I went back through like client work for like this V8 Supercars team. I produced like fucking like 50 videos over 2 years or something for them. Then like pink bike videos from Crankworks, social media clips. Basically, mate, I tallied up all my views.
Yeah.
And I have over 10 million views, mate.
Yeah, right. That's unreal.
And I'm not saying this to like brag about it or anything. My thought process about this is that 10 million people, over 10 million, mate, it's probably like closer to 12 million now after like last month or so. That many people have not just seen my work, but have been somewhat impacted by my work. Whether they chose to be positively or negatively impacted, that's on, you know, that comes down to what they take away from it. But I've put here the amount of views. And then after that, why stop now?
Yeah.
This is like, yeah, why would I stop now, you know? I'm pretty, like, I come from a privileged enough background where I can make this a sustainable career. Why would I stop now? So that for me is a motivating factor as well, you know, being able to have that much of like a potential impact on people's lives, to entertain them, to potentially bring them joy, to inform them of what's happening. Like it's a pretty special feeling that you can be here in Australia while the Northern Hemisphere, for the most part, is snowed under or extremely cold, and a lot of people aren't riding mountain bikes, and you have the best mountain bikers in the world here in Australia, and you can film them and show the rest of the world that, man, that's a pretty special feeling.
Yeah,
like,
it is sick.
That is an honor for me to be able to reach that many people and show them what's going on at Red Bull Hardline and wherever else. Like I don't take that responsibility or duty lightly. And it definitely helps to motivate me to push through if the conditions are less than ideal, or you're experiencing some bureaucratic bullshit, or you just all in all not having a great day, mate. You're like, well, things could be a hell of a lot worse, and this many people have seen my work. Why am I going to stop now? Let's just keep going. Let's see what we can continue to create throughout the years. Because, mate, I tell you, I've got a lot of ideas, and I'm not willing to necessarily put those ideas to rest just yet.
Yeah, that's sick. That's a perfect note to end on, I reckon. Like, is there anything else you wanted to kind of chat about, or was there anything you want to mention?
I just want to apologize to anybody that thought this was going to be a quick podcast, because so did I. I've spoke a lot more than I thought I would. It's nice. It's nice to be able to talk about these things, because I don't necessarily, these are not the type of things you just talk about day to day with, like, I didn't talk about this shit with my brother and my girlfriend, and they both ride mountain bikes and like vaguely follow the sport. So it's like, I don't talk to them about this type of thing because I know it might not necessarily be of direct benefit to them. I hope that anybody that's listening to this, you've gained some sort of value or insights from this. Like, that's a big reason why I wanted to hop on this podcast, is to just kind of potentially shift people's perception on certain things within like media and the mountain bike industry.
I think it definitely will. That's for sure. Yeah. Hopefully it doesn't shake too many baskets or rock too many boats, but we'll see what happens.
That's what I do for a living, basically.
Me too. Easy, mate. Well, thanks so much. I hope you enjoy the rest of your long weekend.
No problem.
And
happy Easter, everybody. I know this is going to be a bit late, but happy Easter.
Yeah, it's good, eh? Good long weekend.
Yeah, I hope you got some choppy up your hay.
Love it. Easy, man. We'll take it easy. And
we'll speak again soon.
There we go, legends. Thanks so much for listening to that one. Huge episode. Absolutely love talking to Ty. Huge episode. We talk about a bit of everything. Hope you learned some stuff from that, because I think it was pretty cool. Anyway, as per usual, thanks to our sponsors, Trek, Franked, Shred Bike Care, Fist Handwear, Lead Out Sports, Captyvate Caps and Oakley. For some of them, like Franked and Shred, for example, and Fist, use Beyond the Tape, get yourself a sick discount. If you want to support the podcast, make sure you tell your mum, tell your dad, tell your nana, tell your sister, tell whoever will listen, share it around, share it on your socials, do all the cool things. We are looking forward to some big guests later on, but until those next episodes come up, go out and have a bunch of fun.